Teal deer, lies and race baiting. And it's not from MTV or from BuzzFeed, and yet it's in the exact same style and makes many of the same outright fabricated points. We was Kangs, yo!
Hi, Mrs. White. I'm your neighbor, Mr. Black, and this is my wife, Mrs.
Black.
We just found out that some people don't realize how much we actually matter to this country, and they don't want us here, so we just came to take back what's ours.
Do you mind if we come in?
I mean, I don't think I have anything that belongs to you, but sure.
Oh,
Great. Okay, come on.
Go through here.
Yeah, it's one of these we invented literally everything videos. Or more correctly, we're going to claim that we invented literally everything.
So I really don't think I have any of your stuff.
Oh, but you do.
we have a checklist right here. Do you have any? I found the peanut butter. Peanut butter.
Peanut butter?
George Washington Carver. He was black. That was all him.
Yeah, no it wasn't. Mashing roasted peanuts into a paste actually dates back to Aztec times. They weren't black, and they've got George Washington Carver beaten by a few thousand years. However, even in recent times, George Washington Carver has still been beaten, by at least 3 other people, depending on how technical you want to be. Marcellus Gilmore Edson, a Canadian chemist and pharmacist, filed a patent in 1884 for the creation of a peanut paste. And this was for the process of grinding roasted peanuts between 2 heated plates in order to produce a paste-like substance, which was likened in its consistency to butter or lard. A few years later, in 1895, Dr. John Harvey Kellogg, when not giving all of his patients yogurt enemas, or tying little boys' foreskins together with wire to stop them touching themselves, he patented a similar process except using both raw and steamed peanuts. In fact, it should be noted that it wasn't even specifically limited to peanuts. In fact, his exact wording was, "My new and improved product is made from edible nuts, preferably peanuts, and such other nuts as can be easily blanched or freed from skins, and is a semi-solid, having about the same consistency as hard butter or soft cheese." The patent was officially filed in 1898. And the third person often credited with the invention of peanut butter is Dr. Ambrose Straub, who patented a peanut butter making machine in 1903. In short, George Washington Carver did not invent peanut butter. Peanut butter, made in its modern form by using heated metal plates to grind peanuts into a paste, and adding things like oils, sugars, and salts, was invented by white people. George Washington Carver did achieve many things in his life. He helped to further refine and teach methods of crop rotation, and helped introduce farmers to alternative cash crops that could improve the condition of their soils in areas that were previously very heavily cultivating cotton crops. The man has a good list of actual lifetime achievements, but his history is also plagued with a lot of false reputation. Moving on.
And do you own
I found a hot comb!
Madam C.J. Walker? She also was black.
She also did not invent the hot comb. In fact, she never even claimed to have invented the hot comb. It is something that has simply been attributed to her repeatedly. Once again, the invention of the hot comb is something which is contested, and seems as though it could be attributed to multiple people depending on your interpretation of what exactly constitutes a hot comb. Francois-Marcel Gratteau, a white Parisian male hairdresser, seems to have been the first person to make use of heated metal implements to style hair, although his device was little more than a heated set of tongs, which produced a very distinct wavy pattern. Although whether or not he invented this device, or was merely the first person to patent it officially, is contested. What is clear is that the hot comb was invented somewhere in France in the late 1800s, with several various patents coming out in the early 1900s which were iterations and improvements on the original design, not one of them belonging to Madam C.J. Walker. While the exact origins of the hot comb are a mystery, and probably will remain so, there is absolutely no evidence that Madam C.J. Walker invented the hot comb, and there is also absolutely no evidence that she modified the spacing of the teeth on her own designed version of a hot comb. There is ample evidence that Madam Walker used hot combs in her work, and there are records of her buying them from suppliers, but nothing that indicates that she invented them. Next.
Is he really eating my chips?
George Crum.
He was black.
And he didn't invent the potato chip. Longtime viewers of mine will remember this one, because it is a false claim that keeps coming up again and again and again. George Crum is falsely attributed with inventing potato chips in 1853. The story goes that a discontent customer kept sending back a bunch of French fries, claiming that they were too thick, too soft, and not salted enough. And Crum, being irritated by the annoying customer, intentionally overcooked the French fries until they were burnt to a crisp, and then sent them out. Unfortunately, this story is an urban legend. The earliest written record that we have of the potato chip is from a book called The Cook's Oracle, published in 1822, over 30 years before George Crum's supposed invention. And they are described thusly: potatoes fried in slices or shavings. Peel large potatoes. Slice them about 1/4 of an inch thick, or cut them in shavings round and round as you would peel a lemon. Dry them well in a clean cloth and fry them in lard or dripping. Take care that your fat and frying pan are quite clean. Put it on a quick fire, watch it, and as soon as the lard boils and is still, put in the slices of potato and keep moving them until they are crisp. Take them up and lay them to drain on a sieve. Send them up with a very little salt sprinkled over them. And that is the earliest written record of the potato chip, taken down by William Kitchener, who was white. Next.
I like my Kim Kardashian boxer braid, could you not?
Cornrows, sister.
I find the fact that you call them cornrows to be somewhat amusing, given the fact that black people didn't invent the farming of corn, and thus the planting them in rows that gives the hairstyle its name. Once again, you've got the very ancient Mexicans to thank for that. But doing some research around braiding and what evidence we have for the oldest hair braids, well, I found 2 pieces of evidence. The very oldest evidence we have of people braiding their hair comes from a piece of art called the Venus of Willendorf, believed to have been made somewhere between 28,000 and 25,000 BCE, basically the late Stone Age. And this statue shows what appears to be a pregnant woman because it's very in line with stylized pregnancy and fertility symbols, and she appears to have braided hair. And this statue was discovered in Austria. And the second oldest piece of evidence that we have for braids appears to be the Venus of Brasempui, which I'm pretty sure is not how you pronounce that, but it's as close as I'm going to get. And this is also from the late Stone Age. And it appears to show, again, a woman with plaits in her hair. And this is a piece which came from France. So the 2 oldest things that we have on record that show braided hair don't come from predominantly black countries. Now, these are, of course, simply the oldest solid physical representations that we have of braided hair. This in no way proves that that area was the oldest place to have been braiding their hair. It simply shows that these are the oldest places that had some way of recording the fact that they braided their hair. So it's quite possible, and I would say more than likely, that people were braiding their hair in a variety of styles before this. And if you want to go down this route, we're going to have to start having a very lengthy conversation about whether or not the first humans were black or not, because that is a very contentious issue in and of itself, with some sources suggesting yes, and with other sources suggesting that no, early humans had skin tones more akin to that of chimpanzees or bonobos, varying in some cases from quite dark to actually quite light, and that the development of then very dark African black skin was a subsequent evolution that came later. That's one possible explanation, but this could be an entire presentation and topic in itself. For now, back on to the actual video.
I don't know what to say. I mean, I don't want you guys to leave. My heart's broken.
Ooh, actually, don't let your heart break too much, because then you can't get a pacemaker, because Otis Boykin, he's black, and he did that.
Not even close. Once again, this is something that we've covered before. Depending on your definition of pacemaker, it has several different possible inventors. John A. McWilliam in 1889 discovered that you could stimulate the heart via the use of electric currents. But this was not so much a pacemaker as it was a guy with a car battery, some electrodes, and a heart. In 1929, there was a story published about an Australian doctor, Dr. Mark C. Lidwell, who stimulated the heart of a stillborn child for 10 minutes and ultimately then saved the child's life because their heart took over beating of its own accord. Again, a loose definition of pacemaker, but this device did have that same effect. Otis Boykin is credited with improving the internal pacemaker. Improving something does not mean inventing something. But as we have covered in previous videos on this topic, the first pacemaker was invented by a Swedish gentleman by the name of Dr. Rune Elmqvist, who developed the first implantable pacemaker, and this was in 1958. And Otis Boykin was absolutely nowhere to be seen throughout the invention or the procedure. Next.
And we're also going to have to go through your iTunes playlist and take any Kanye West, Beyonce, half of Drake, and Michael Jackson. Wait.
Hell yeah, he one of us.
Michael Jackson.
Yeah. And while we're at it, just give us the jazz, the gospel, the rock and roll, the blues, the R&B, the hip hop, pretty much anything with rhythm.
Yeah, the whole music thing is kind of A, non-starter, and B, a non-issue. Because most of those genres of music have their roots in European music. Gospel music, for example, has its origin in Christian hymns, which would not have been written by black people. Unless you want to go so far as to say that black people invented clapping their hands and stamping their feet to keep a rhythm, which is pretty typical of gospel music, then you're not really going to get very far. The point is, music is forever changing and forever evolving, and different people have different subjective opinions and ideas of where one genre begins and ends, and what various elements constitute different genres, and some people will even go so far as to state that certain groups or certain bands in one genre are in fact in two distinct genres based on whether or not they like one or both of those groups. Trying to also claim that all of these genres of music would not exist without black people kind of doesn't really work. All of these genres that you've mentioned, many of them are actually inspired by other ones that you've mentioned anyway in a pseudo-linear fashion, but also they are combinations of styles of music from different cultures. If you were to somehow scrub one of those cultures from history, the music would still exist, it would just have a slightly different sound to it. So the idea that you would eliminate it in its entirety simply does not follow.
And before we go, we just need one more thing to seal the deal.
Yep.
My comforter and my towels.
Cotton.
Okay, I will give it to you, that was a pretty funny joke. Although black people didn't invent cotton, just a very small number of them picked it for a while. But hey, on your way out, I've got some ideas for a few things that you could also take with you. So African Americans make up about 12% of the American population. If they all left, the prison population of America would immediately drop by 35%, the homicide rate would drop by about 50%, as would the rate of rape and sexual assault. You'd lose somewhere between 30 and 40% of all gang members. The strain on the welfare system would be reduced by about 40%. So you're going to be taking all of that with you as well, right? Hey, America, I don't want to tell you how to run your country or anything, but I think you've just been offered an amazing deal. Stop plaiting your hair in one particular way, don't listen to some crappy music, and free up millions of dollars of taxpayer money, and live in a statistically significantly much safer country. You see, this is what happens when you try and play the race card. It has a really bad habit of backfiring in a very big way. Maybe you should just stop.